David gave us some really interesting thoughts there. So the transition to net zero emissions in aviation is at a critical juncture, a few years out from significant policy developments such as the UK's Jet Zero strategy, and terrific to have Greg, who was a key part of the team involved in that publication, and the EU's Fit for 55 legislative package as well. The kind of big questions jump out: what next as we move into the next kind of phase of policy making with a new government in many different jurisdictions, but particularly in the UK and EU. Hydrogen plays a vital role in decarbonising aviation through both its use in ESAF and what we've been talking about mainly in this forum in terms of direct propulsion systems. Aviation demand for hydrogen will be obviously very high. According to the Alliance for Zero Emission Aviation in the EU, 2.9 megatons of hydrogen per annum will be needed to directly power 68% of projected flights across the continent in 2050. And according to IRENA, that's almost exactly the global total of electrolytic hydrogen that's in production today. So clearly a huge scaling up required. To provide an overview of what their departments are working on and address some of these topics, I'm joined by an expert panel. So I would like to welcome first Eva Oney, who's Eva is a team leader in charge of sustainable aviation at the European Commission's Directorate General for Mobility and Transport, better known as DG Move. And she works within the Aviation Policy Unit, focusing on energy transition in aviation investments and strategy. UK counterpart Greg Easter is the zero emission technology expert within the Department for Transport's Aviation Decarbonisation team. We heard obviously from the Minister, Mike Kane, and great to get some of his thoughts. Greg was an integral part of the team that built and launched the UK's first of a kind Jet Zero strategy, which includes the ambition for zero emission flights in the UK before 2030. And of course, we want to examine, as I trailed, how we can produce the clean hydrogen we need. So on the energy side, we're also joined by Ian Sleeman, a lead policy advisor working on low carbon hydrogen within the UK departments for energy security and net zero. Fortunately, I think, Ian, you'll have plenty to say about aviation because you've worked for over 10 years as a design engineer at Rolls-Royce, I believe, in the civil aerospace business. And during that time, you led a team of engineers working on combustion component design. So really interested to get your thoughts on that. But we're going to start with Eva. So Eva, can you give us an overview of some of the EU policy in this area, the work of your department, and maybe some reflections on this topic?
Yes, thanks, and thank you for the invitation. It is great to be discussing this exciting topic today. So the overall flagship you referred in your introduction for the EU is the European Green Deal, with the ambition for Europe to be climate neutral by 2050. And there we also have underpinning this exercise of the climate target plan, which look more into how different sectors will contribute to this. And the overall, all sectors will need to contribute, aviation included. And when we look at the aviation, it is a hard to decarbonize sector. Yeah, you can hear me well?
It's cutting out every now and again, but I think we're catching most of it. I'm sure it's the Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, because I joined from my mobile, so I had some technical issues. Yeah, so I will try to to change the settings. But okay, I will try to change the settings after my introduction. But yes, so all the technology options will be needed. So because there's sometimes discussion SAF or direct propulsion solutions, and the non-drop-in fuels, and both the drop-in fuels will be needed to help aviation to decarbonize, and we need to pursue all the avenues. And we have, as part of the ambition, we have proposed a package of proposals under this Fit for 55, where we have RefuelEU Aviation, we have alternative fuels infrastructure regulation, we had revisions to Renewable Energy Directive, and the emissions trading system, amongst others. And those are the four which help to support the transition in aviation. From the regulatory side, the focus is on SAF, but as well they are already incorporating elements to support zero emission aircraft, and to as well for the review in the future. We have also different financing under Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, Innovation Fund. We have also cooperation under ASEA, so Zero Emission Aviation Alliance, which is led by our colleagues in DG DEFIS. So I leave it here with the introduction. I will also try to change the settings. Well, thanks.
I think actually it's working pretty well at this juncture, so we can hear you well enough. But yeah, so that would be great. Terrific. Thanks, Eva. We're going to move over to Greg for your opening remarks, and then we'll move to Ian. So, Greg, what would you like to add there?
Hello all, and yes, similarly, the technology defeated me, so I've also joined on my phone. But this is from the Department of Transport. We just have our office tiled in this way. So yes, I mean, you've already heard from Mike Kane, Minister for Aviation here in the UK earlier, so I won't sort of repeat too much of what he said. But yes, we are about 6 months now into a new government in the UK following our general election in the summer. You know, we've seen a lot of momentum continuing from what has previously taken place on aviation and the environment. The new government have set out some clear what we call missions, sort of A on growth and B on clean energy. Britain becoming a clean energy superpower. So you know, this is a sort of good way of signalling intent, but I think it also shows that we are working collaboratively across government departments. Obviously, aviation fits very neatly into that growth bucket, and potentially could be a really strong driver of these sort of new fuels like low carbon hydrogen. So continues to have a very high prominence. Some of the sort of exact mechanisms we're using and sort of forums whereby we work with industry are going through some changes, as you would expect when you have a new administration. But certainly from a Department for Transport perspective, it's one of our 5 priorities, delivering greener transport. So it sort of cuts across everything we do in the department. I think we'll probably touch on some of the more specific sort of policy measures that we're using later in the session. But we're definitely very sort of joined up across government. I know Ian is going to speak after me, but we very much recognise, I think, the challenge around some of this technology is very much a new industry, but huge opportunity if we can sort of act as a first mover in the UK on zero emission flight. So yes, I'll pause there.
Brilliant. And you trailed that well, Greg, by mentioning the manifesto ambition that the UK will become a clean energy superpower. So, Ian, how are we doing on that journey? What's the plan there?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if not. But yeah, thank you for that introduction and the invite today. And I was going to start with the Prime Minister's missions, because that really sets the context for hydrogen policy in the UK. Starting with the Clean Energy Superpower mission, which means, well, 2 things really: delivering clean power by 2030 and accelerating to net zero. Shift towards renewables will require accelerated deployment of low carbon flexible power, such as hydrogen power stations. In addition, hydrogen will be key to decarbonising certain sectors, including those that are hard to electrify. But there's also the growth mission, which is also extremely important. Hydrogen is expected to play a major role in that, creating good, secure jobs in our industrial heartlands, supporting a just transition using a homegrown source of fuel. And government is committed to ensuring hydrogen unlocks economic opportunities and new low carbon jobs for the future. I'll say a bit about what we're doing to build a low carbon hydrogen economy in the UK, so that hydrogen is available in the future to those who need it at the right place, time and cost. So fortunately, the UK has some great advantages. It's optimally positioned to support a thriving hydrogen economy, world leader in offshore wind, geological advantages in natural storage, UK companies at the forefront of hydrogen technical development. And the government is in delivery mode. There's a lot going on, and I'm not going to try and go through everything now, but a couple of key things to mention. In the autumn budget, we confirmed support for the 11 green hydrogen projects that will comprise around 2.3 billion revenue support. There was also the government support for carbon capture industry, which will include CCUS blue hydrogen. We've got a policy framework which has allowed us to leverage private sector investment to kickstart the hydrogen economy. And we're also doing work around infrastructure that will be needed to transport and store the hydrogen, which will be vital to scaling up the hydrogen economy. Transport and storage will connect producers with consumers. Balance misalignment in supply and demand has a potential to increase overall energy security of supply by providing long-term energy storage and enabling that low-carbon flexible power that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, talking more specifically about demand in aviation. So the government's hydrogen end-use policy is focused on bringing forward applications with the greatest strategic potential to support deep decarbonisation in the UK economy. And we continue to monitor whether our sort of existing measures are sufficient to incentivise hydrogen use in the sectors where it's needed. Hydrogen policy in general, including in relation to production and storage, constantly informed by demand modelling. Aviation modelling indicates that demand will initially mostly come from heavy industry and power, but hydrogen demand for aviation could ramp up quickly from the 2030s and become a leading demand sector by 2050. But we're always looking to try and improve our understanding of where demand might come from and where, and we welcome input from industry. And then finally, just to kind of reinforce a point that Greg was making around my department and Department for Transport, always working together closely to ensure the use of hydrogen in transport is realised both to decarbonise the transport sector and capture the economic opportunities of hydrogen in transport. And with that, back to you, Dominic.
Brilliant, thanks, Ian. So I don't know if any of you caught the keynote presentation from Professor David Victor, but just to kind of recap one of the points that David was making, he was saying that as many industries, especially commoditized industries, tend to be kind of low risk appetite for, and they gravitate towards solutions that might be the more comfortable and tried and tested. And obviously that's has some impacts. But I'm just curious as to when you talk about, he also made the point that demand is is the crucial driver of investment, Ian, particularly in terms of hydrogen, particularly as well. What do you as policymakers need to see from the industry to be able to make to improve those projections, to be able to make a clearer case for demand? What do you need to see from industry really that will help in terms of delivering the policy that will drive forward hydrogen aviation? And I'll go first. I mean, whoever wants to take it, but I'll go first to Ian, and then maybe we'll come to Eva.
Yeah, I mean, I think the further we look into the future, I think we need to recognise that there was always going to be uncertainty, but we do work, as I say, continuously with stakeholders. Obviously, we've been in discussions with yourselves to gather as much data as we can. There is stakeholder engagement through industry forums, such as the Hydrogen Delivery Council, which is you could consider as an organisation similar to the Jet Zero Task Force, an opportunity for industry and government to engage across sectors, but including in terms of aviation demand. We have representatives there from the ATI and from SAF industry. And we also work with bodies such as the NESO, who, for example, through their Fares the Future Energy Scenarios, do extremely useful work in understanding demand. And through 2026, they're going to be taking up more kind of strategic planning responsibilities from a hydrogen economy perspective. So we expect them to get more involved in demand. But I think it's about gathering that data from a range of sources, working closely together, but also kind of recognizing that in the longer term, I think there will always be that uncertainty. So it's about continuous improvement over time.
Superb. Eva, anything to add on that point?
Yes. Hydrogen is important for hard to abate sectors. So it's aviation, maritime, but as well for the industrial. So there is a lot of activities led by our colleagues in our departments to develop, to create favorable conditions to develop hydrogen economy based on the different pillars there from the regulatory. So, for example, we had recently adopted the rules which prescribe the methodologies, because here the sustainability would be aspects important to have certainty there. What is green hydrogen? What is a low carbon hydrogen? Through the working and the planning on the infrastructure, up to the support to create more certainty, market certainty for the revenue certainty mechanism type of support, where we have the hydrogen bank to develop hydrogen production in the EU, but as well to focus on international cooperation and also imports as the demands will be very high. So that's more horizontally, various streams are happening on the hydrogen. Different partnerships we have on the clean hydrogen. We have the partnership on the as well. We raise the finance. We have for the R&D. We have also the stakeholders collaboration. That's the one that I mentioned on the upstream. But then specifically on the aviation, we have the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, where there you have €4 billion for the development of the technologies, and then of course various streams, more how to prepare market entry of these radical technologies where they are mature enough, how to commercialize them, and how to ensure that infrastructure goes hand in hand, and then the airports operations are adjusted to that, the network operations as well. The economic dimension. So that's part of the ASEA work of the ZeroAvia Alliance.
Terrific. Thank you. Greg, same question to you.
So I think there's 2 points I'll make. Firstly, what I'll sort of term taxonomy. I think it's really important that aviation as an end user and the energy system are sort of talking the same language, sort of using the same figures, using those figures in the same way. That's something we've tried to sort of encourage a bit by some of our convening activity as a government, bringing sort of different actors into meetings. But clearly, as Ian says, there will be demand, but it's important that aviation can sort of communicate that to the energy sector in a way that it understands. I think sort of including in that, recognising when there are, in some areas, aviation-specific issues that inform demand. Clearly, not all airports are located geographically in areas where it's straightforward to produce low carbon hydrogen, such as where there's renewable energy. Some of them are, very luckily. Some clearly are sort of near our major cities inland, but also works on the global sector as well. We want to see A to B flights, which is going to mean some level of production and hydrogen availability at sort of destinations from the UK as well. I think the second point I make on this is just sort of reiterating the importance of sort of demonstrating some of this stuff. I'm always conscious the public are quite distant from some of this. There's lots of new technologies coming out in the net zero space. it's normally quite hard to show people new technology on an aircraft because each generation of an aircraft, however improved the technology is, looks very much like the last one. So I think it is really important, stuff ZeroAvia have done, test flights, but also work we've seen in the UK recently from Bristol Airport in the Tees Valley, to name another example, just where we can show this technology is feasible, it's coming down the line, it's something that can be used commercially in the near future. I think that sort of just sends a really clear message to the public, to investors, to government as well, around the sort of certainty there is of this stuff coming through.
Great. You've alluded to many of you to forums in which government is engaging with industry. ASEA, a good example, obviously the Jet Zero task force. I'm just curious as to, we have this question, I think, Greg, you alluded to this great collaboration across government departments, but in terms of cross-departmental knowledge sharing on technology roadmaps, demand profile, how does that work? How does it work best? What are the initiatives that can really help all departments understand, given that it requires various different departments to come together to realize the full potential? We could go first to Greg if you're able and keen to address that, given that you alluded to it.
Well, I can address it. I don't think I have a sort of single answer in terms of this. I'm afraid is just going to be an iterative thing that will need to continue. Government will have to keep coming out to industry, testing our understanding, sort of gathering information whilst the industry gets going. So I don't think, unfortunately, we can't always offer a sort of single once in a lifetime sort of information sharing exercise. But yes, I mean, I can talk some more around Jet Zero task force, specifically if needed. But yeah, I think my message is very much to industry, just sort of keep engaging with your stakeholders across governments. The work has been fed in. There's lots of stuff going on behind the scenes, both to kind of build our evidence base, but also making sure they're sort of talking to each other in the right way.
And
sorry.
I was going to say to Eva. So I mean, we try not to talk too much about Brexit to strain relationships in these days, but we obviously have a regional aviation system. People are looking at domestic aviation, looking at intra-EU aviation, but of course, short-haul travel between the UK and EU member states is a big element. So, how important is it for the EU and other governments to collaborate on the policy framework? I think David Victor described it in some respects as chaos. I think he was talking about maybe more of the US and various different states, but there is a lot of alignment between regulators and the CAA and EASA. But what can be done to kind of understand policy that can across EU and UK relations?
Well, yeah, aviation is an international, global industry, so it's very important that the systems are interoperable, that you can operate smoothly from one country to another without technical obstacles, and so that's key. And we have very good cooperation globally. We have very good cooperation within ICAO. So it's an example of the sector which I think of one of the best, if not the best, example of the cooperation internationally on all various different matters and how to standardize and of course with the EU and with the UK the cooperation is important. We are cooperating within the European group for the ICAO on all various matters, and that should not be different as well for those. Not to as well to say that the value chains, even if you look there, and are very interlinked.
Brilliant. Okay. Ian, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm particularly curious as to, and actually all panelists do feel to chime in on this, but when you think about hydrogen, when you think about hydrogen aviation, part of your department name is now is energy security. So in the aviation context, why is there any thinking happening about why hydrogen might be beneficial, or you know, the move to zero emission or low emission air travel will be beneficial towards energy security?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be no surprise for me to say that energy security is of fundamental importance to DESNZ. I guess the clue's in the name. And yes, it is something we think about. You know, the use of a homegrown fuel like hydrogen could help to increase energy security across a range of sectors, including aviation, but not just aviation, by reducing security supply risk as well as, you know, exposure to global price shocks. And I think energy security is certainly one important factor behind the government's drive to create a domestic hydrogen economy in the UK. So yeah, it's certainly important.
Superb. Greg, Eva, anything to add on the energy security? Is that something you think about from a transport fuel perspective?
Yeah, no, in overall, from the hydrogen and the sustainable aviation fuels, that's an important aspect, of course. And we will need to see where the ones we grow the sector, where the sources are coming, and we need to make sure that it's competitive as well to have a domestic. So we are open. When you look at the refuel mandates, it's open for both domestic and supply. But we need to develop be competitive. So we see in the north of Europe has the advantage for producing of the green hydrogen, but we would like to see more developments.
Greg, anything to add there? I think we've lost Ian, but hopefully he'll have to come back.
I mean, yeah, I think just to reiterate what your previous speaker before this panel was talking about, there are competitors and feedstocks. There are, if we followed a sort of single source approach for future aviation fuels, we'd probably very quickly come up against limitations. So yeah, I mean, it's critical to everything we do that not only is there that fuel available, but it's at the right price so that passengers can continue flying. So yeah, sort of works both from a net zero, but also from that sort of consumer angle as well.
We're talking a bit here about competitiveness in terms of feedstock and fuel supply. Obviously, competitiveness is on everybody's mind from an industrial strategy point of view. I think we don't have colleagues from DG Grow, we don't have colleagues from the Department of Business and Trade, but how much is it important for when we're thinking through the energy policy and the transportation policy to be also thinking about the competitiveness issue and adopting new technologies that are originate and create industrial benefit?
No, if I can go ahead though, that's really key, because we know that those costs on those technologies will be passed on to the airlines, and then to the, depending on the capacity how airlines can absorb, but most likely it will be passed to the passenger. And then we need to also make sure that there is no carbon leakage, and the traffic does not move to the hubs where you don't have a high environmental standard. So it's also linked to the effectiveness of our environmental policies. So in the sector which is so globally competitive, that's very important. The cost here, for example, it's very interesting is this under innovation fund, which has the money which comes actually from the airlines, the system of reusing it, and you have actually yesterday, my colleagues has published the calls. You have for the hydrogen auction call for more than 1 billion. You have the regular calls, and as well, more on the ongoing basis, there are the SAF allowances where is a price difference is between the fossil and the sustainable fuel is paid. And their hydrogen is 95% of the price difference is so they are also instruments to support the uptake, which also links to your very first question as well. But it helps as well with the transition, because over the time we see that the price competitiveness should be with the scale, with the size, and also with the efficiency improvements, the prices should go down, and as well the prices of fossils we expect to go as well up. But the early movers is important for the transition period, and early movers to have the smart policies.
Greg, Ian, anything to add on that point?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in quickly. Just to say, I mentioned at the top that the growth mission is a key part of the context for hydrogen policy, and you mentioned the industrial strategy, which is again a key part of that growth mission, due to be published next year. And I think it recognises that, and others have alluded to this, that it doesn't necessarily make sense for governments and countries to try to do everything, but focus and specialisation can have advantages. The paper published in October looks at, I think it's 8 sectors, including advanced manufacturing and clean energy industries. And I know that DESNZ, that the department, are very much involved in the development of that strategy. So yeah, very important from a growth perspective, and hydrogen we expect to be part of that.
Greg, I think you wanted to add something also.
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, yes, there are some areas of this where we'll want to be competitive. As a country, we want things to happen in the UK and sort of us to move first. But talking of funding calls, we are, of course, reassociated with Horizon Europe, UK taxpayer support going into that, as well as from other European states and well and beyond, actually. Some funding calls coming up from Clean Aviation early next year. So yes, if anyone who's watching hasn't been sort of taking interest in that, now's a really good time to do that.
Yeah, so the R&D support is there. Just going back to Professor Victor's keynote, he talked, I would say, with a fair amount of circumspect nature about the next 4 years. In terms of the new administration, there's also been some fairly clear statements about climate policy. I just wonder if you have a perspective about whether that creates a threat or opportunity for the work that's happening in the UK and the EU to lead on climate forward policy. So let's go first to Ian.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult one. I'm not sure if there's anything I'd be able to say on that at this stage. So I think from my perspective, it's a bit of a watch this space.
Yeah, fair enough. And Eva, I don't know if you have anything to add on that point.
Yeah, for us, it's actually, that's a busy week. We have the call publication. We have also a new management team starting. So the new college. So no, certainly the opportunity, and we are being asked, well, okay, when we look at the political guidance, when we look at mission letters, where is the climate? It's all about competitiveness, industrial policy, strategic autonomy, and it is actually there, because it's reaffirming what was in the previous mandate of the coalition with the European Green Deal. We have adopted, and now we need to focus and implement what was adopted and monitor how it is. So there is another, all these questions now recently appearing, mandates will be reviewed and we will change. So to also answer to this, that's not the intention. The intention is we focus on the implementation. and we will be reviewing. Yes, there is a review but the review is to adjust how to make it more efficient, what works, what doesn't work. And what is also interesting in the review, I are mandated to specifically look at the any mechanism, how to further incentivize what can we do to support zero emission aircraft. The same, for example, is for the review for alternative fuels infrastructure regulation as well. There will be review. So the review meaning the Commission report by the end of 2026, as well to see in particular for electric hydrogen type of planes where it stands, and then the Commission on this basis will decide whether to come with the proposal and to reinforce more the provisions to support those technologies.
So
but,
yeah. Sorry, Eva, go ahead.
To link also to your question is opportunity, because now it's a focus on the industrialization. So we focus on implementation, but as well looking and monitoring, do we need any from the industrial perspective to also support production in the EU from the international cooperation.
Superb. So yeah, the message there, the framework is there, and perhaps there are reviews underway for Refuel EU Aviation and also for FEAR in the near future. The framework is there. It's about the implementation. I've got a couple of questions from the audience I'd like to turn to, if that's okay. So one for Ian, I think, to kick off. So can the panel share some real life examples of where hydrogen is being used as the driver towards net zero?
Yeah, in terms of real life examples, I mean, I guess hydrogen, like a lot of things, is going to sort of follow this S curve where we have relatively gradual growth to begin with, where we're seeing these early R1 projects coming forward at relatively small scale, and then we expect them to scale up potentially quite rapidly, including from an aviation perspective. But I guess if the question is real life examples now, I think one thing I would point to is in the on-site generator market. I think we're already seeing some real products on the market now for low carbon hydrogen from a real trailblazer perspective there.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Eva.
I wouldn't like to refer to particular companies and particular projects. They are actually many that we are supporting through the Clean Aviation joint undertaking. There is also from the infrastructure side the Core Green airports and ports. So there are three big projects on airports. So there can be seen which airports are participating, and there are some testing and demonstrations. We also have very interesting now the Connecting Europe facility, which is focused on deployment of the infrastructure. So now it's a road, but also the rail, but also the recharging for road. There we will also have now included hydrogen. So before focus was on electricity supply to aircraft, but now it's also hydrogen. But of course now it's more for the ground handling, the ground operations, because it's the first to test. But it's also something interesting to look. But to see many projects, those who are not yet in the ASEA, I invite to join there, because then you can see a lot of different enthusiastic and startups and more established also players being there.
Superb, Greg. Unless you've got anything to add, I'll move to one other question. That's it. Unless you want to, there is somebody asking if you're wanting to pick your favorite airports that have the best hydrogen capacity, but I'm not sure if that's one you really want to tackle right now. But I don't know if there's anything you want to add in terms of some of the examples of work that's already happening to develop the hydrogen ecosystem around airports in the UK.
Thanks, Dominic. Yes, I mean, I was going to say I've been on a hydrogen bus, I've been on a hydrogen car. I've also seen, certainly, I think at least 2 demonstrations at airports around aircraft tugs, and baggage tractors, various things like that. I'm not sure I have a favourite. and I think it's also quite important that we test it in a range of different environments as well. Some of the issues will be different for the sort of smaller gaseous hydrogen aircraft at sort of smaller regional airports than your sort of big international hubs. So I don't think we should sort of assume that one demonstration or testing in one environment sort of proves the concepts. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen a huge amount of sort of progress on the technology. Obviously, proving technology works technically doesn't mean it's going to be commercially deployed everywhere at the right cost. But yes, I'm very energized from the stuff I've seen, including just during the last year.
Good. Good. We also heard a fair amount about how industry should collaborate with government. There's a question here about what message would you send to climate activists, and perhaps we extend that out to also to the NGO community. What message do you say to that, sense them into how they can play a positive role in helping aviation and its journey to decarbonisation? And maybe we'll go to Eva just in case you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, this is a big transition for the sector. So see which stakeholder you are in the value chain and act. Don't wait like let the others be the first mover and then I will see later on I will join. We need those early adopters. We need the first movers and engage and reach out. Come with your ideas. There are a lot of different forums for the discussion, for the funding. As well, try to apply. First time doesn't work, but we had very good results. For example, on the innovation fund, the zero emission plane. We have first project, so keep trying. We will get there.
So as a positive note to end on, because the funding mechanisms are there to bring some of this technology to fruition. So that's a very strong message from you. I'm going to say thank you to all of you for joining. Really appreciate the contributions. So thanks to Greg, Ian, and Eva.